Family dinners are supposed to bring people together, sharing stories, laughter, and good food. But that night, I learned the table can also reveal truths sharper than any knife. I sat quietly enjoying the meal I had helped make possible, when suddenly my son-in-law leaned over, lifted my plate, and said with a smirk, "You've had enough." The room chuckled as if it were a harmless joke, but inside, I felt the sting of humiliation. What no one at that table knew, what he certainly didn't know, was that I had already paid the $15,000 bill for that very dinner. The evening had started beautifully. The restaurant gleamed with chandeliers, waiters in crisp uniforms gliding between tables. My daughter beamed with pride, telling everyone how special the night was. She didn't mention that weeks earlier she had called me in tears. "Mom, it's too expensive, but he wants to impress his colleagues. Can you help?" Of course, I said yes. Quietly, without fuss, I paid the invoice. $15,000 for a private dining room, a custom menu, fine wines. I told myself it was worth it to see them happy. So I walked in that evening dressed in my best, heart light, ready to enjoy the celebration. Family gathered, glasses clinked, laughter rose high. But midway through the meal, as I reached for another bite, my son-in-law leaned over. With a half grin, half sneer, he slid my plate away. "You've had enough," he said. The room laughed. My daughter gave a nervous smile. My cheeks burned. I froze, my fork midair. Did he really just take food from me? Like I was a child who couldn't be trusted? I looked around the table. No one defended me. No one spoke up. The moment passed quickly for them, swallowed in chatter, but for me it lodged like a stone in my chest. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply folded my hands in my lap and smiled thinly, because I knew something they didn't. That plate of food he had taken from me, I had paid for it. The wine in his glass, paid. The candlelight flickering on the tablecloth, paid. Every laugh, every toast, every satisfied sigh in that room had been made possible by me, and the time would come when they'd realize it. The clinking of glasses carried on, laughter rising louder than the music. My son-in-law toasted to himself, bragging about how he pulled this night together, how he knew the best places in town. Guests nodded, impressed. I sipped my water quietly, each word he spoke a deeper cut. The plate he'd taken sat empty at the far end of the table, forgotten. My stomach ached with hunger, but it was nothing compared to the ache of humiliation. I watched my daughter's nervous smile, the way she looked at him, like she was praying he wouldn't go too far. She didn't know I had seen enough already. The waiters brought out another round of wine, bottles worth hundreds each. My son-in-law raised his glass high, the hero of his own story. "Nothing but the best for my family," he declared. And the irony nearly made me laugh, because in my purse, folded neatly, was the receipt with my name on it. $15,000, paid in full. I pressed my hand against the leather of the bag, steadying myself. Not yet, I thought. Let him play his part. Let him bask in borrowed glory. The truth always waits, and when it arrives, it does so without mercy. As dessert was served, the chatter grew even louder. My son-in-law leaned back, patting his stomach. "Quite a meal, huh?" "Worth every penny," I smiled thinly, my voice soft but clear. "Yeah, every penny." No one caught the weight in my words. Not yet. Inside, though, my resolve crystallized. I wouldn't humiliate him in front of his friends tonight. That would only cheapen the lesson. But I would make sure he understood, in no uncertain terms, who had truly paid for his performance. The bill would come, and when it did, I would be the one holding it. Because respect isn't demanded with shouts. It's earned. And sometimes it's purchased quietly, with a check no one else saw until the right moment. And mine was waiting. By the time the last plates of dessert were cleared, the room was buzzing with contentment. Guests leaned back in their chairs, smiling, praising the meal. My son-in-law soaked it in like sunshine, his chest puffed, his voice booming. Then the maitre d' approached with a leather folder in hand. The bill. He placed it gently at the center of the table, a subtle reminder that even the finest nights must be paid for. My son-in-law reached for it confidently, flipping it open as if it were nothing. The moment his eyes fell on the total, his smirk faltered, his jaw tightened. He quickly snapped the folder shut, but not before those closest saw the number. $15,000. "Everything all right?" one guest asked. "Of course. he said too quickly, forcing a laugh. Just what I expected. But his hands trembled on the leather. I leaned forward, my voice calm, carrying just enough to be heard. No need to worry. It's already taken care of. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? I reached into my purse, pulling out a copy of the receipt, my signature clear at the bottom. I placed it on the table, sliding it toward him. It was paid days ago. By me. The chatter died instantly. Glasses hovered midair, forks stilled. Every eye turned to him, then to me. My son-in-law stared at the paper, color draining from his face. You paid this? Yes, I said evenly. Every bottle of wine, every bite of food, every candle on this table, all of it. The silence deepened. No one laughed this time, not after the scene earlier, when he had taken my plate away like I didn't belong at my own table. I let the weight of the moment sink in before adding, so when you reached across and decided I'd had enough, remember, it was my generosity filling your glass. His lips parted, but no words came out. Around us, guests exchanged uneasy glances. My daughter's cheeks flushed crimson, torn between embarrassment and realization. I leaned back in my chair, calm now, the sting of earlier replaced with quiet triumph, because humiliation, once exposed to truth, has a way of turning on its author. The dinner ended not with laughter, but with an uneasy hush. Guests excused themselves quickly, murmuring polite goodbyes, their eyes darting between me and my son-in-law. As the last door closed, the silence in the room was suffocating. My son-in-law sat rigid, his hand still pressed against the receipt like it might disappear if he gripped it hard enough. My daughter shifted in her seat, her voice finally breaking the tension. Mom, why didn't you tell us? I met her gaze calmly, because true generosity doesn't need applause. I wasn't looking for credit. I was looking for respect. Her eyes fell. She knew exactly what I meant. My son-in-law cleared his throat, his bravado gone. You should have said something. I didn't know. No, I corrected, my tone gentle but firm. You didn't care to know. There's a difference. He winced, the words landing harder than I expected. For a moment he looked younger, smaller, stripped of the arrogance he'd worn all evening. The children, sensing the storm, had gone off to bed. The three of us remained at the table, surrounded by empty glasses and cold plates. Finally, my daughter whispered, She's right. He turned toward her, stunned. You're taking her side? She paid for everything, my daughter said, her voice rising for the first time. She's been paying for years, helping us when we couldn't manage. And you? She stopped, shaking her head. You embarrassed her tonight. In front of everyone. The room fell silent again, heavier than before. My son-in-law rubbed his temples, his shoulders slumping. I don't know what to say. Then don't, I replied softly. Let your actions say it. I gathered my purse and stood. I'm going home. Think about what kind of man takes food away from the very person who put it on the table. As I left, I felt no anger, just clarity. Because for the first time, the balance had shifted. The power no longer sat in his swagger or his loud voice. It sat in the quiet truth of a $15,000 bill that carried my name. The days that followed were quiet, no calls, no messages, just silence. I half expected my daughter to reach out with excuses, but she didn't. Instead, one evening there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my son-in-law stood there, not with his usual smirk, but with a paper bag in his hands. Inside were groceries, vegetables, bread, a roast chicken. I thought maybe I could make dinner tonight, he said awkwardly. I raised an eyebrow. For me or for your conscience? His face flushed, but he didn't argue. He carried the bag to the kitchen and began fumbling with the pans, clumsy but determined. My daughter joined, quieter than usual, but with eyes softer than I'd seen in years. As we ate, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was tentative, like a wound beginning to heal. Finally, he cleared his throat. I was wrong, he admitted. I wanted to look important that night, to show everyone I could provide. I didn't think about how it looked, or what it meant to treat you that way. You deserved better. For once, his words weren't laced with pride. They were plain, honest. I set my fork down, meeting his eyes. Respect isn't about money. It's about how you treat people, especially the ones who've made sacrifices you don't even see. You don't take food from their plate. You don't laugh at their expense. You honor them." He nodded slowly. "I understand now, and I'll do better." Over the weeks, his actions spoke louder than his words. At family dinners, he made sure I was served first. He carried my chair, poured my drink, asked if I was comfortable. It wasn't about groveling. It was about learning, about showing he finally recognized my place at the table. My daughter noticed too. She hugged me tighter, thanked me more often, and reminded her children, "Respect your grandmother." Always. The $15,000 was gone, spent on a single night, but what lingered was worth far more: a shift in the balance, a restoration of dignity. And for me, that was the true payment. In the end, the night wasn't remembered for the wine or the fancy dishes. It was remembered for a single plate, taken in arrogance, and a truth that could no longer be ignored. Respect isn't about who speaks the loudest or who boasts the most. It's about seeing the hands that quietly make everything possible and honoring them. My son-in-law thought he was in control that night, but the $15,000 bill carried my name, and with it, a lesson he'll never forget. Money paid for the meal, but dignity turned it into a memory. So let me ask you, have you ever been dismissed or belittled, only to reveal that you were the one holding everything together all along? Share your story in the comments, and join me for more tales where quiet strength outshines pride.